With us now is Lacy J. Dalton. How are you today?
Oh, Donna, I couldn't be better. Thank you. Well, it's a beautiful day out there.
It is. It's absolutely amazing. We got to first meet on the bus that took us from the hotel to the cruise ship. This is my first cruise. Have you been cruising before?
I have been on this very boat before several years ago and just had the best time. And it's so nice to be back. I don't get to Nashville too much. I live out in the West and I work mostly in the West. And so it's like going home. I'm kind of like the weird cousin that came from California.
It's the holiday time and there's pumpkin pie on the table.
And I get to see all my cousins and brothers and sisters and stuff. And it's nice because I don't get to see anybody very often. But a lot of the people that are on this cruise were contemporaries of mine when my career was bigger in Nashville. I'm an independent artist now, so I don't get back there as much, and I don't do exactly the same sort of material either.
It's interesting too. I noticed that I guess the J might stand for your original first name. Is that correct?
That's right.
Which is Jill, right? So I thought to myself, I looked at the timeline and I was like, you kind of changed your name early on. Was there a reason behind that?
When I was signed to CBS Records, I was signed as an outlaw artist. So they wanted me to have a name that sounded like an outlaw.
Oh.
So Jill, my name at that time was Jill Croston Anderson. And Croston was my father's son who died when I was 27. And Anderson is my ex-husband. So they said, nobody knows Jill Croston, and there's already Lynn Anderson, and you need a name that sounds like an outlaw.
Nice.
So I had my guitar player's first ex-wife's name was Lacy B. Walker. And I thought if they ever make me change my name, which was loathsome to me, by the way,
Okay.
I'm going to be Lacy B. Walker. So I proudly took this name into the very famous Billy Sherrill, who was at that time the biggest producer in Nashville and for many, many years. And it will always be probably one of the Billy Sherrill was the producer who found and wrote with Tammy Wynette and George Jones and Charlie Rich and Ray Charles almost to the end of his life. And the Outlaws, he did David Allan Coe and Johnny Paycheck, and just Billy was he was an amazing producer. And he's the one who insisted that I change my name. And it was pretty funny because my manager was staying in one hotel, and actually, he was in Hollywood, and I was in Nashville. And I would call my manager and say, "You tell Billy that I said this." And Billy would call my manager and say, "Tell or tell Jill that I said this." Nobody, he said, and I finally went, okay, these guys probably know more about selling records than I do. So I will be, he said, "Lacey's okay, but there are too many Walkers in the music business. Find another last name." So I found the name Dalton.
I like it. It's got a nice ring to it. Always has a nice ring to it. And when we first met, I was telling you that my television show was divinely gifted to me. Kind of just was like a computer download. And you shared something with me that I also thought was fascinating in your songwriting. What happens for you sometimes?
Well, it's so funny. I was talking with Bobby Tomerlin last night, and also with Tony Hazelton, and we were talking about how really a lot of times we just hold the pen.
Hmm.
It's
Oh, like autocratic writing. You
it
mean like you just write?
comes through, and probably the most profound experience I've ever had with that was a song called "Little Boy Blue," that turned out to be a song for my son, and the whole entire song came in a dream.
Mm.
And I happened to have the guitar sitting right beside the bed. And I just picked up the guitar when I woke up and started playing this song. And I asked my ex-husband, I said, "Is this a song? Have you ever heard this song before?" And he
Right.
said, "No, I don't think I have." And so I wrote "Little Boy Blue," and it's a pretty magical song. I had, in fact, it was never a single, but I had to make single records because there was so much demand for it that
Oh, now that's a good feeling, right? So, right.
it was very nice.
And you've had such great success with all of your songs. And I just was, when I was doing my research on you, just saw an article that was in, I believe, Broadway World, or is it
Which
Broadway
I
World or
probably haven't
Broadcast
seen.
something? No, you haven't. And it was you playing an acoustic version of one of your songs with Dale, I think.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was about the 40th anniversary of one of your famous songs.
It is. It's the 40th anniversary of the "Taking It Easy" CD, which was a very big CD. "Taking It Easy" was probably the top selling song that I ever had. It didn't go number one. It went to number two, but it went all over the world, and it was a very big selling song. And then we had a song that I wrote with Billy called "Everybody Makes Mistakes," and that thing I found out recently was my most played song ever in the United States, and I did not have any idea about that. Didn't even have it in the show for a number of years.
And in a way, I mean, after you've lived a little bit of life, we realize we all do make mistakes, but it's kind of sweet, like the challenges that we overcome in life, right?
One of the lines in that song is, uh, "Take my love, love's for taking. Break my heart, a heart's for breaking." And I think what we have to realize is that sometimes when we have a broken heart and are separated from someone we think we cannot bear to live without, that's one of the best things that ever happens to us because it forces us to grow in a different direction. And even though at the time you sure don't want to hear that,
No,
you know.
absolutely. And they're like, "Oh, you'll find somebody else. There's millions of people in the world," and you're like, "Yeah, but I kind of like the person that I was with, you know." And you know what it is for me too. Sometimes, Lazy, it's when you have to tell your whole life story over again to a new partner. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is where I grew up, and these are the kids I have, and this is this, and this is that. It's just it takes a lot of effort, in my opinion. Sometimes people tell me they just start with a clean slate. They just meet somebody new. They don't talk about their past. They just move from that moment forward.
I think I'm more like you. I
Okay.
think we have to kind of talk about who we were and who we've been and, what I don't like hair left in the shower drain. That's probably one of the first things that I do. I'll make the coffee at night.
Right.
I'll get it ready, but please bring it to me. Please bring me my first cup of coffee because it takes a long time. I don't think my spirit wants to come back into my body every day. It's kind of like I have to go, oh, yeah, I got to go back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. But if I have coffee, then I have a reason to come back here.
Kind of makes sense to me. It really does. There's like all these portals where you're jumping through lifetime after lifetime, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm back. Sometimes I'll look at like there's a dirty clothes pile at the end of my bed, and I'll be like, how did that get there? I thought I already put it in the laundry. I don't know, silly things.
That's been happening to me a lot, but it didn't happen until kind of recently. So
Okay.
I'm getting a little more age on me,
Yeah.
and I've realized that sometimes I think I'm so clear the vision I have of something that I've done. Like I took that out there and I made that coffee. I walk out in the morning and the coffee isn't made, but in my head it was done.
You've done it. I know. I think when you're
Annoying.
I know. I think sometimes your creative brain, and like right now we're doing this interview and we're like, did you feel that vibration? Like the
do.
floor's shaking. I don't know if they're starting the motors, but I just want the audience to know if you see us going up and down, we're not bouncing on the bus, right? The wheels on the bus go round and round. I know that you have a passion for wild horses. Can we talk about that and the fact that you love them so much?
Well, Leslie, my manager here, Leslie Adams, is the treasurer of a foundation that I put together with a woman named Carolyn Cardinelli, who was my manager at the time. We're still very good friends. And we started the Let 'em Run Foundation to preserve and protect the wild horses in our country in about 2003. And we've been doing that ever since. And what we do is a lot of the mom and pop groups that take wild horses from the range. They're removing thousands and thousands of horses from the range. A lot of them go to slaughter up in Canada. And a lot of them come oddly, from Indian reservations because the native people have not had the means to do birth control on their herds. And the Bureau of Land Management has had so much resistance from horse groups about birth control. I always say, I didn't want to do birth control. I didn't think it was the greatest thing in the world, but it was better than having 10,000 babies. And that's how I feel about birth control with the animals. We have to do something or we won't have any left. Because the Bureau of Land Management, which has control over most of the horses in the United States, really would like to remove almost all of them.
Really?
Yeah, that's
And then
really,
they would be extinct at that point.
they would be very close to being extinct. And I'm with Chief Seattle. First the animals go, and then guess what? You know what happens if the bumblebees go.
Yes.
We have a couple years before we're gone. And, this world is not a child anymore, and we have been terrible stewards.
It needs a little love. It really does. It needs a little love.
What the world
Needs now is love, sweet love. It's
That's
the
the
only thing that there's just too
Too
little
little
love.
love. For Tula Clark, that was such a great song. What a great singer she was.
Yeah, indeed. I'm having fun here on this country music cruise, and obviously you've done the country music cruise before. What does it mean to you now to be back here this year?
Well, it's kind of like a family reunion. As I said, I don't get back to Nashville very often. So for me to see everybody in one place and get to hear and be meet new songwriters, I especially am fond of the writer artists.
Yes.
I really enjoy them as people. And almost all of them are incredible people, and I hope you get to interview a lot of them because there are a lot of them here, and they're very soulful. But I always wanted to do a show called "The Story 16th Avenue: The Story Behind the Song."
Ooh, that's one of your top three most amazing songs ever. Do you love that one too yourself? Yeah.
I never get tired of singing it, and I wish I'd written. A lot of people think I wrote that song, but it was actually written by a fellow Pennsylvanian by the name of Tom Schuyler, who literally lived that song. When he wrote that song, he was a carpenter in my friend Even Stevens' studio. He then went on after it had a couple of hits. That one and a song called Old Yellow Car that my record company president, who was no longer my first producer, but some guy they sent down from New York who
Right.
didn't know anything, wouldn't let me put out.
Huh.
It was put out by somebody else and got a Grammy nomination. So Tom's career really shot up. Became a writer artist with Schuyler, Knobloch, and Overstreet, and they had a long string of hits because Paul Overstreet and Tom Schuyler and Fred Knobloch were three of the very best writers, still are in Nashville. And I think they probably paper their houses with BMI awards for million airplay songs.
Right.
But they had a bunch of hits. Then he went on to be the president of one of the record companies, and I believe it was RCA. And then he went on from that and became the president of the International Songwriters Association. So from being a carpenter in a studio in Nashville, Tennessee, coming from Pennsylvania as no one, and going all the way to the top of the world. And he wrote that song and then lived it, proceeded to live it. It's a pretty wonderful
Yeah,
song.
somebody's got a guy has a studio down the street. I'm like trying to think of all the lyrics. You know them better by heart, but that's really cool. I love hearing, and I know that part of the country music cruise is that they do have those songwriter series where you can actually sit down and you can listen to the stories behind the lyrics.
We are having so much
Are
fun.
you?
We're having so much fun. I was with Bobby Tomerlin and with Tony Hazelden, I guess he pronounces it, last night, and have done things with Tony before, but I'd never done anything with Bobby. And wonderful people. Just the writers are, and a lot of times they're incredible singers. A lot of Tom Schuyler is a far better singer than I will ever be.
Oh,
He no, I mean
Lacy.
he really sings well,
Okay.
but he couldn't stand the road. His wife said all he did was eat, and he would go to the candy machine. He was so homesick,
Lonesome, right, yeah.
and lonesome for his family. He's a real family
Yeah.
guy.
And sometimes that happens, right, on tour. Like when you're doing city after city after city or motel and hotel and sometimes gigging and being on the road is sometimes tiresome, I would think.
Oh, it's back in those days when there was a honky tonk every 300 miles, and you stayed out for months at a time. DUI laws have stopped that now.
Okay.
There are not so many honky tonks, and you don't stay out. Usually, you stay out for a weekend or 3 or 4 days. I do have a friend. There's a songwriter from Canada whom I love named Cord Blund, and he's a Canadian cowboy who writes the most incredible songs you have ever heard. And I just saw that he has a tour of 65 days in a row.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember when it was like that for me when I was his age, and it is exhausting. And if you are a family person and a reclusive and you like to stay home, it's not a great job for you because I guess Tom gained a whole bunch of weight and decided it really wasn't worth it.
He's like, no,
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so. What are you most looking forward to now that the communities have opened back up? Are you looking forward to like playing some gigs out in the West near you and, being there with your audience again, one on one?
It's real. At first, it was strange.
Okay.
After a year and a half of not playing, I kind of got up on the stage and went, I want do I really remember how to do this? It was a little odd. And it is fun. It's great. And people are so receptive because people have been cooped up for like a year or two and they're like, we want a party. You know,
Yeah, they're ready.
they're ready. And the audiences have been wonderful. I mean, it's really been wonderful since everybody's so glad to see you again. Break my heart, hearts get broken.
Now, how did you learn how to play guitar? Who taught you that?
I'm not sure I ever have, really, to be truthful. We had a play in high school. I never started playing to my came from a musical family. My mother and father and sister all played instruments. My dad played all the stringed instruments. My mother sang harmony and played guitar, and my sister played guitar and piano and wrote songs, and I was the unmusical one. And do not say it. Don't say it.
What?
Don't say it. And don't you guys say it out there in the audience in that world. But I remember sitting under this huge oak table in our kitchen, and I would sit up against that middle pedestal and listen to everybody sing. And when I was 17 years old, I was in a theater arts program, and we were doing a play, and somebody had to play a guitar, and my family were the only ones that even had a guitar in that little town.
Wow.
And so I borrowed a guitar from my father, and I learned how to play a few chords, hideously, of course, for this play.
What do you remember? What the play was? Was it like Bye Bye Birdie, or does it come back to you at all?
Oh, I so wish I have a memory like a steel sieve. But I
But you
did.
remember that it was for a play,
Well,
though.
I remembered it was for a play
Okay.
because, and that's how I started playing, but not till I was 17.
My goodness. So it just I wanted to play guitar, and I couldn't really afford a guitar, and the only guitar that I could afford in the beginning was one that had a broken neck. And I took it home anyway and glued it together, and I tried to learn, and I still to this day I can sing, but I haven't learned how to play guitar. I tried, but
You know, Donna, that is so true that it happens to people with not just broken guitars, but with really poorly made guitars. You don't have to have an expensive guitar, but you do have to have one that works at least properly. It doesn't
the
have
strings and
yeah, it doesn't have to sound great or anything, but it does. You do need to be able to have one that actually does what a guitar is supposed to do. Otherwise, it's very hard to learn.
it is very hard to learn. And what about piano? Have you ever like sat down at the piano and tried to clunk something out?
I've never had the slightest interest
Okay.
in doing that. My sister plays, and Dale plays. My guitar player
Right.
plays a lot of instruments and plays keyboards, but I've not wanted to do that. Guitar. I am mostly interested in lyrics.
Okay.
I'm very interested in
The
what
storytelling.
and what the storytelling and what songs say and how that lifts people. That's why I do music. That's a lot of us do it for that reason. I never did music because I liked sparkly clothing and wanted to be,
Oh yeah.
I that was never very interesting to me, and in fact, quite boring for me to have to sit through award shows and stuff. Even when I was winning an award, it was like, oh dear,
There's like rubber chicken on the table. You're like, I don't want to eat that anymore.
Well, no,
But
I just think when you're comparing artists, you're comparing apples to oranges to pears. All of those things taste great.
you're absolutely right.
And I just think it's the way that people do careers and stuff like that. But I never had much interest in that. My interest is more of a calling, and I think a lot of songwriters feel that way. They feel that they have something that spirit wants to say through them, and that's their function in the world. And Bobby and I were talking last night, Bobby Tomberlin, and he said, yes, it's like we just hold the pen.
Mm.
And I think that's how many, many good songwriters feel.
Is that how Let 'Em Run came to you? The most recent song about the horses, your wild horses that you love?
I wrote that song because I had a mentor.
Okay.
Her name was Olivia Fiamengo, and she was this amazing wild horse advocate. She was kind of a strong person. She was probably about 5'8", 9, maybe 10. And I remember when I first met her, she had carried a foal who was injured all the way up out of a canyon, and they weigh at least 125 pounds. And I remember meeting her right after she did that and got that baby straightened out, and it did survive, which was really wonderful. But I remember that she didn't have a lot of money to do the work that she was doing, and I thought to myself, I want to help. So I want to make a record and I'm going to sell this record. And we've made thousands and thousands of dollars for the horses with this one little record we made. And I wrote that song for her. I wanted to let her know that somebody had her back, and that we're still very, very, very good friends. She's been a wonderful teacher to me and a wonderful mentor, and done a lot of great work for the wild horses. And I learned most of what I know from her.
I think sometimes we are the stewards in life where we either share our time, our talent, our treasure. And when you're given a talent, then you know that you can utilize that to do good, right?
It's been my talent has been the greatest blessing. I've walked with captains and with kings, with ordinary people were the people I came from, and I have been all over the world and seen all sorts of things that you wouldn't be able to see, and met all sorts of the doors were open because of celebrity. In fact, when Dale and I, my Eddie Dale, my guitar player, and I went to work up at a prison in California, up in Susanville, California, at High Desert State Prison, and we taught music. I taught songwriting, and he taught guitar to 20 to life prisoners up there. I did that for 3.5 years.
Oh,
That was he's still doing it. He's done it for about 8 years, and it was the best job I ever had, and the most rewarding job I ever had. And now these are 20 to life. These are the guys who were in there for a long time. I never had one moment of fear because they were so grateful for the programming. They were so grateful to learn how to write a song. We wrote a musical together. The guys and I wrote this musical, and we performed. It was a full length musical with all kinds of songs and a storyline. And we performed it for the warden and a bunch of friends at the end of our term. And it was truly wonderful. And I have a whole different idea about prison and people who end up going there. I have a whole different view of that than I did before. I didn't want to do the job. I was in a band with a friend named Jack Bowers, who was part of an organization called the William James Association, which takes arts into corrections. You cannot believe the changes in people.
Hmm.
The people at the prison couldn't believe it. That there was a new doctor that came to the prison, and we had just celebrated the end of our musical production. And the warden came down, and I had invited the new doctor to come too, because I had bought pizza and cake for everybody, because that was and the well that they had done such a great job, and everybody loved the music. And the doctor said to the warden, he said, "Why do you allow her to do this? Why in the world would you ever allow her to do this?" And the warden looked at him and said, "Because it works." He said, "When you come down."
Music can heal. And it just touches that human soul, that spirit. Music can do that. Music is powerful.
I think I think it's the most powerful tool. I think it's one of the most powerful tools that spirit can give you, to change lives, to lift spirits, to teach, to heal, to just say, "I know what you're feeling. I've been there. You're not alone. I've been there too." And that's why we do it. A lot of us do it for that reason. It has nothing to do with, "Look at me, look at me." I'm sure there's some of that, and probably in the beginning more of it, but as you get older in it, that's not so important. What's important is that connection you have with people. And I know you know what that is, because I can feel you have it already. I know
Well,
that's how
I
you
got
are.
teary today because there was a performer up on stage and they weren't sure anybody was going to come to their gig. And people showed up, and then people were dancing while they were singing. And I got teary because I could see from the stage that they knew that it was, that, you know what I'm saying? Like, people came, they danced, people were taking pictures, and then it was okay. For a performer, that's really what you want. You want to provide something that makes someone emote, where it gets them up on their feet, that changes their life, that gives them a different perspective. So I've really loved our time together. I never really know when I'm interviewing somebody, like, what we're going to talk about or whatever. I kind of know where we're driving the truck, but I don't really know. And it was such a joy. I had so much fun with you.
I'm so happy to be here with you, and I so appreciate your interest. Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome.
I'm pleased to be here.
Wow. Lacy J. Dalton. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation. We feel like you were here with us, and maybe next time we'll bring pizza and cake. I don't know, but thank you for
I'll
watching.
go for that.
Okay.